Hi, I'm Jenny Schroedel with Optage Hospice for Presbyterian Homes and Services. My work is in grief support, and I do grief groups, individual counseling, and educational events. Mental Health Connect contacted me to ask if I could speak on life after loss, and we had planned to do that first talk in a Twin Cities church in April. Obviously, things have changed, times have changed, and we're trying to adapt to bring something that might be helpful to you at this time. So I want to try to address the question, could this be grief? Am I grieving? And if I am grieving, how might I make it through? Grief is the normal response to any kind of major loss. And grief is a whole body experience. We experience grief in our minds, we experience it in our hearts, and we experience it in our bodies. We may feel exhausted, we may feel irritable, we may feel like we sleep and it's not enough sleep, or we might feel kind of jumpy and anxious, restless. C.S. Lewis described it as, I never knew that grief felt so like fear. I am not afraid, but the sensation is like being afraid. I keep on swallowing. I think that many of you might be feeling something a little bit like that. Now, I am looking at this experience as many different types of grief coming together. You know, the first one is clear grief, the way that we usually think about grief when a person dies, that sense of sadness and longing. So many deaths have happened already. We expect more deaths to come. So there is clear grief. There's also anticipatory grief. You know, that can be characterized by a dread feeling in the pit of your stomach. What is coming? How am I going to cope with it? Knowing that there will be losses, but not fully knowing what shape they might take. And that's also connected to ambiguous loss. Ambiguous losses are those losses in our life that are often not clear and they're often not named. You know, ambiguous losses have to do with things that have no possibility of closure. So right now, because we're in it, there is no possibility of closure, right? It's ambiguous. I've heard ambiguous loss described as a chronic feeling of sadness with no clear beginning and no clear end. That's ambiguous loss. When you think about the collective grief experience right now, you could visualize it like this huge river washing over the surface of the earth with lots of little streams trickling into it, and those could be ambiguous, anticipatory, clear, also even complicated grief. Complicated grief is when there's something about the death that is really difficult to work out inside of yourself and may cause you to have some years of mourning afterward. And in this case, when family members may not be able to visit their loved ones, that's complicated grief. There is also the loss of moments. You know, many of us have lost moments that we won't ever get back. Seniors in high school and seniors in college may not ever get to experience their graduation. Seniors in high school, maybe no prom. Funerals are being canceled. Weddings are being canceled. It's an altered landscape that we're in. So I want to talk about 3 concrete things you can do to help you through the experience. And these are based on things that have been helpful to my clients in the past, and also the reading that I've done on grief and loss. The number one thing I would say is name it. If you are grieving, just try to identify it. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? Is this grief? Notice what you're feeling and find someone you can talk to. Find a trusted friend, find a counselor that you can talk through telemedicine. Find what you need at this time, but just name it. As soon as we can identify what we're feeling, then we may feel a little bit of power over it. We no longer will feel completely overwhelmed by it. Number 2, self-care. Now, self-care, I think, is the most universally helpful thing in grief. Self-care is often thought of as kind of a commercial enterprise, something we pay for. You know, in our society, we talk about going to get a massage or going to the spa or getting a haircut or whatever it might be. Like so many other things, COVID-19 is bringing us down to the basics of life. No longer is it something that we bring from the outside in, that we pay for. Now it's something a little bit more basic and concrete. It's noticing how we're feeling and then noticing things that help us feel a little bit better through it. I would say things like taking a walk in the woods in the morning, if you can do that. That's good self-care. Also giving yourself staring time to just maybe look out the window and not try to be productive. Each of us needs time to integrate all of these changes that are happening to us at it's a disorienting rate of change. Take some staring time. It's okay to move a little bit more slowly as you try to integrate these changes. This time is actually productive. You know, it's the opposite from how we often think about it. It can be productive to simply sit with the experience and try to understand it. The number 3 thing that can be really helpful is small personal rituals. Now, for those of you that attend churches, that participate in Lent, this is a pretty disorienting time, right? Because many of us give up things for Lent, but most of us don't give up going to church for Lent. The rituals that sustained us and supported us and the community connections that we had in person, all of that's been taken away. I've heard people say it's the lentiest Lent they've ever experienced, or, I didn't expect to have to give up so much for Lent. 2 things about that. Number 1, if you can participate in a live stream of church services, do that. That can help you. Number 2, think about small personal rituals that might help you. They could be as simple as saying morning prayers when you get up, or getting up and having a cup of coffee on the front steps of your house. It could be taking a bath with Epsom salts at night. It could be reaching out to a loved one that you're concerned about every day at the same time, or a phone call with a friend at the same time. The important thing about a ritual is that you schedule it. We need things right now to be clear. We're in the midst of so much chaos, and if you know that there's something that you can count on every day, it'll help you a lot. My own personal ritual right now is every morning I get up and I take some chalk out and I write a quote on the sidewalk in front of my house. And all day long, neighbors come by, they read the quotes. My kids will say, "Ma, there's a customer out there." It's actually a lot of fun to communicate with my neighbors this way. And then every night, I take some time and write about the quote and its meaning, its connection to loss. This is a ritual that's helping me to make a little bit of sense inside of myself in a situation that feels pretty chaotic. It helps me sleep. I also wake up thinking about the quote that I'm going to do that day. Think about what might work for you as a daily ritual and bring something in that's regular, predictable, that you can make happen, and keep it simple. It doesn't have to be elaborate to be powerful for you. So just to summarize these 3 simple things that can help with the grief and loss connected with COVID-19. Number 1, name it. Talk about what you're experiencing. Be honest. Pauline Boss, the author of Ambiguous Loss, says, sadness is treated by human connection. Now, we might not be able to connect in person, but we can still make connections with other humans. And we can find places to take that sadness. Name what you're experiencing and find someone you can talk to about it. Number 2, self-care. Whatever you can do to help yourself through this, do that. Think about the person in your life that is the most compassionate, the person that helps you through your most difficult times. Try to be that person to yourself. Try to talk to yourself like that person would talk to you. Give yourself that gentleness. Give yourself that care. Give yourself the rest that you need in the midst of all the things that are changing. If you work in healthcare right now, this is all the more important to give yourself that extra care, both when you're on the job and when you're off the job, because you are on the front lines supporting all of us in this work. Finally, think about small rituals, something small and concrete that you can do every day that becomes predictable to you, that you can count on. These things can have a huge impact on how we experience life, how we experience loss, how we notice the passing of time. You know, time may feel like it has screeched to a halt, but time is still moving. We are continuing to move through this experience. We certainly don't know when it will end, but it will not be forever as it is now. And I want to close with some words from Rilke that have been really helpful to me personally and to many of my clients. Rilke, in his poem, Go to the Limits of Your Longing, writes, "Let everything happen to you, beauty, terror, just keep going. No feeling is final." So remember that. No feeling is final. How you feel now is not necessarily how you will feel later, but be gentle with yourself. Care for yourself at this time. Care for your loved ones in whatever way is feasible for you, and stay safe and healthy. And I look forward to meeting you in person when we get to the other side of this. Thank you so much.